Page 86. The Snake Charmer. My sister's birthday today. Happy birthday, Tova. We were sitting on an enormous pine that had fallen during a storm. Trees are barely able to hold themselves upright in the inhospitable earth of the permafrost, and storms easily rip them loose, tearing up their roots, toppling them to the ground. Platonov was telling me of his life here, our second life in this world. I frowned inadvertently when the Jankar mine was mentioned. I myself had been in rotten, difficult places, but Jankar's terrible fame was everywhere. Just how long were you in Jankar? A year, Platonov said quietly. His eyes narrowed, and the wrinkles on his forehead became more pronounced. Before me was a different Platonov, older by 10 years. But I have to admit it was tough only at first. For 2 or 3 months, I was the only one there who could read or write. I was a storyteller for the criminal element in camp. I used to retell novels of Dumas, Arthur Conan Doyle, and H.G. Wells. In exchange, they fed and clothed me, and I ate well. You probably made use of that single advantage yourself of an education. No, I said, I never told novels for soup. I don't even know what that is. I haven't heard of novelists, so I have heard novelists, though. Is that a condemnation? Platonov said. Asked. Not at all, I replied. If I survive, then Platonov, using the same ritualistic formula that introduced any thought concerning things more distant than the next day, I'll write a story about it. I even have a title, The Snake Charmer. How do you like it? It's good, but first you have to survive. That's the main thing. Andrei Fyodorovich Platonov, a movie scriptwriter in his first life, died about 3 weeks after this conversation. Died the way many die. Swung his pick, stumbled, and fell face down on the stone ground. Proper treatment could probably have returned him to life, because he wheezed on for an hour or more. By the time the stretcher bearers arrived, he was silent, and they carried his small body off to the morgue. He was frail. He was a frail burden of bones and skin. I loved Platonov because he didn't lose interest in life beyond the blue seas and tall mountains. The life from which we were separated by so many miles and years. Meanwhile, we'd almost ceased believing in the existence of that life, or rather, we believed in it the way schoolboys believe in the existence of America. Platonov possessed some books, God only knows how, and he would avoid the usual conversations. What kind of soup there would be for dinner? Would we get bread 3 times a day, or all at once in the morning? Would the weather be clear tomorrow? I loved Platonov, and I will now attempt to write his story, The Snake Charmer. The end of the workday was by no means the end of work. After the horn sounded, we had to take our tools to the storeroom, turn them in, get information, go through 2 of the 10 daily roll calls to the accompaniment of the guards swearing at us and the pitiless abuse and shouts of those of our comrades who were still stronger than us. They too were exhausted and were in a rush to return home and grew angry over every delay. Then there would be still another roll call, and we would set out in formation for firewood. It was a 5-kilometer walk to the forest, since all the nearby trees had long since been cut and burned. There was a work gang of lumbermen to cut the trees, but the mine laborers had to carry a log each. How heavy logs that even 2 men couldn't carry were delivered, no one knew. Trucks were never sent for them. Trucks were never sent for logs, and all the horses were sick in their stalls. A horse weakens and falls ill much quicker than a human being. It often seems, and it's probably true, that man was able to raise himself from the animal kingdom because he had more physical endurance than any other animals. It's not correct to say that a man has 9 lives like a cat. Instead, one could say of cats that they have 9 lives like a man. A horse can't endure even a month of the local winter life in a cold stall if it's worked hard hours in sub-zero weather. It's true that the horses of the local Yakut tribesmen don't do any work, but then they don't get fed either. Like the winter reindeer, they dig out last year's dry grass from under the snow. But man lives on. Perhaps he lives by virtue of his hopes, but he doesn't have any hope. He's saved by a drive for self-preservation, a tenacious clinging to life, a physical tenacity to which his entire consciousness is subordinated. He lives on the same things as a bird or dog, but he clings more strongly to life than they do. His is a greater endurance than that of any animal. Such were Platonov's thoughts as he stood at the gates with the log on his shoulder and waited for a new roll call. They brought and stacked logs, and people entered the dark log barracks, hurrying, pushing, swearing. When his eyes had become accustomed to the dark, Platonov saw that not everyone by any means had been at the work site. On the upper berths in the far corner, about 7 men were seated in a circle around 2 others who sat cross-legged in Tartar style, playing cards. They'd taken the only light, a kerosene lantern with a smoking wick that quivered as it lengthened the flame, and made their shadows sway on the walls. Platonov sat down on the edge of the bunk. His shoulders and knees ached, and his muscles were trembling. He had been brought to Jankar just that morning, and it had been his first day of work. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that word. No, Jankar. I don't know. I'm sorry if I am. He had been brought to Jankar just that morning, and it had been his first day at work. There were no vacant spots on the bunks. When they split up, he thought, I'll lie down. He dozed off. When the game on top ended, a black-haired man with a mustache and a long nail on his left little finger leaned over the edge of the bunk. Okay, send that Ivan over here. A shove in his back awakened Platonov. They're calling you. Where's that Ivan? A voice shouted from the upper bunks. My name isn't Ivan, said Platonov, squinting. He's coming, Fedya. What do you mean he's not coming? Platonov was pushed out into the light. You plan to go on living? Fedya asked him. as he waved his little finger with the dirty nail before Platonov's eyes. I plan to, answered Platonov. Sorry. A fist struck him heavily in the face, knocking him to the ground. Platonov stood up, wiping off the blood with his sleeve. That's no way to answer, said Fedya mildly. I can't believe they taught you to answer that way in college, Ivan. Platonov remained silent. Go over there, scum, said Fedya, and lie down next to the shit pail. That'll be your place, and if you make any commotion, we'll strangle you. It was no empty threat. Platonov had already seen 2 men strangled with a towel. He had already seen 2 men strangled with a towel. When the thieves were settling scores, Platonov lay down on the stinking boards. How boring, guys, said Fedya, yawning. Maybe if I just had someone to scratch my heels. Mashka, hey Mashka, scratch Fedya's heels. Mashka, a pale, pretty boy, dived out into the strip of light. He was a very young thief, evidently about 18 years old. He pulled off Fedya's worn yellow boots, carefully took off his dirty worn socks, and, smiling, began to scratch Fedya's heels. Fedya giggled and squirmed from the tickling. Get out of here, he said suddenly. You don't know how to tickle. But Fedya, beat it, I said. All he does is scrape you. No tenderness. The men sitting around him nodded their heads in sympathy. I had a Jew in Kosoy. Kosoy? He knew how to scratch. Boy, did he know how to scratch. He was an engineer. And Fedya grew pensive thinking about Jewish engineers who scratched heels. Fedya, how about this one? Why don't you try him out? His kind doesn't know how to scratch, said Fedya. Wake him up anyway. Platonov was brought out into the light. Fix this damn lamp, Ivan, ordered Fedya. Your job will be to put wood on the fire at night and carry out the pail in the morning. The orderly will show you where to dump it. Platonov obediently remained silent. In exchange, explained Fedya, you'll get a bowl of soup. I don't eat the swill anyway. Okay, go back to sleep. Platonov lay down in his former spot. Almost everyone was asleep, huddled together in groups of 2 or 3, because it was warmer that way. It's so horrible. It's so boring. It's so boring. My legs are getting longer, mourned Fedya. If only someone could tell a novel. When I was in Kosoy. Fedya, hey Fedya, how about this one? Why don't you try him? That's an idea. Fedya came to life. Wake him up. Platonov was awakened. Listen, said Fedya almost obsequiously. I shot my mouth off a little. That's all right, said Platonov through clenched teeth. Listen, can't you tell novels? Something flashed across Platonov's face. Of course he could. A cell full of men awaiting trial had been entranced by his retelling of Count Dracula. But those were human beings there, and here, should he become a jester in the court of the Duke of Milan? A clown who was fed for a good joke and beaten for a bad one? But there was another way of looking at the matter. He would acquaint them with real literature, become an enlightener. Even here at the very bottom of the barrel of life, he could awaken their interest in the literary world, fulfill his calling, his duty. Platonov could not bring himself to admit that he would simply be fed, receive an extra bowl of soup for not carrying not for carrying out the slop pail, but for a different, more noble labor. But if it was so noble, but was it so noble? After all, it was more like scratching a thief's dirty heels than enlightenment. Fedya waited for an answer, and an intent smile on his face. I can, Platonov stuttered, and smiled for the first time on that difficult day. I can. Oh, sweetie, Fedya livened up. Come on, crawl up here. Have some bread. You'll eat better tomorrow. Here, sit on this blanket. Have a smoke. Platonov hadn't smoked for a week. He received an enormous pleasure from the butt with its homegrown tobacco. What's your name? Andrei, said Platonov. Listen, Andrei. Make it something long and spicy. Something like the Count of Monte Cristo, but nothing about bars. Something romantic, maybe, suggests Platonov. You mean Jean Valjean? They told me that one at Kosoy. They told me that one at Kosoy. How about the Club of Blackjacks, then? Or the Vampire? There you go. Let's have the jacks. Shut up, you bastard. Fedya shouted. Platonov coughed. In the city of St. Petersburg, in the year 1893, there occurred a mysterious crime. It was almost light when Platonov felt he couldn't go on anymore. That's the end of the first part, he said. That was great, Fedya said. Lie down here with us. You won't have much time for sleep. It's already dawn. You can get some sleep at work. Get your strength up for evening. Platonov fell asleep. They were being led out to work, and a tall country boy who had slept through yesterday's jacks pushed Platonov viciously through the door. Watch out where you're going, you pig. Immediately someone whispered something in the boy's ear. When they were getting into formation, the tall boy came up to Platonov. Please don't tell Fedya I hate you. I didn't know you were a novelist, brother. I won't tell, said Platonov. Next chapter, the Golden Taiga. The transit prison is known as the minor zone, and the major zone is the office of mines, with its endless, stockily built barracks, prison streets, triple strands of barbed wire, and guard towers that look like starling roosts in the winter. The minor zone has even more towers, more barbed wire, more locks and latches, for this is where transit prisoners are kept, and anything can be expected of them. The architecture of the minor zone is ideal. On one enormous square building intended for 500 prisoners, and with bunks stacked 4 high. That means that, if necessary, thousands of convicts can be squeezed in. But it is winter now, and only a few prisoner consignments are being prepared so that the zone seems almost empty inside. The barracks have not yet dried out. A white fog hovers in the room, and ice forms on the insides of the pine log walls. Over the entrance hangs an enormous 1,000-watt bulb. Owing to the uneven current, the bulb alternates between dull yellow and a blinding white light. The zone sleeps during the day. At night, doors open and people appear under the lamp, holding matches in their hands and calling out names in hoarse voices. Those whose names are called, button up their pea jackets, step over the threshold, and disappear forever. Out there, the guards are waiting, and the truck motors are coughing. Prisoners are hauled away to the mines, collective farms, and road gangs. I am there too, on a lower bunk near the door. It's cold down here, but I don't dare crawl higher, where it's warmer, since I could only be thrown down. The upper berths are for the strong and mainly for hardened criminals. I don't have the strength, anyway, to climb up the steps which have which have been nailed to a post. I'm better off down below. If there should come a fight for the lower bunks, I can always crawl under them. I cannot bite or fight, although I have learned well all the tricks of prison fighting. The limited amount of space, the prison cell, a convict train car, crowded barracks, have dictated the methods of grabbing, biting, breaking, but I just don't have the strength for such tactics. I can only growl and curse. I struggle for every day, every hour of rest, every part of my body prompts me to act in this way. I am called up the very first night, but I don't tighten the rope that serves as my belt, nor do I button my coat. The door closes behind me, and I enter the space between the inner and outer doors. The work gang consists of 20 men, the usual quota for one truck. They are standing at the door, from which billow clouds of thick white smoke. The assignment man and a senior guard look over the men and take a head count. There is another man standing off to the right. He is wearing a quilted coat, felt pants, fur hat with ear flaps, and fur mittens, which he beats energetically against his body. He's the one I need. I've been hauled around enough to know the law perfectly. The man with the mittens is a representative who can accept or reject prisoners. Don't take me, sir. I'm sick, and I won't work at the mine. I need to be sent to the hospital. The representative hesitates. Back at the mine, they told him to select only good workers. They didn't need any other kind. That is why he has come. The representative looks me over, my torn pea jacket and filthy buttonless military shirt, which reveals a dirty body scratched bloody from mouse bites, rags around my fingers, other rags dried with string around my feet in an area where the temperature drops to 75 degrees below zero, inflamed, hungry eyes, and an incredible, emaciated condition. He has seen this sort of thing before, and he knows what it means. He takes a red pencil and crosses out my name with a firm hand. "Go on back, you son of a bitch," the assignment man said to me. The door swings open and I am again inside the minor zone. My place on the bunk has been taken, but I drag out the intruder. He growls from habit, but soon calms down. I fall asleep as if knocked unconscious, but awake at the first rustle. I have learned to wake up like a wild man or a beast, without any immediate drowsy stage. When I open my eyes, I see a slippered foot hanging from the upper bunk. The slipper is totally worn out, but it is nevertheless a slipper, and not a regulation issue shoe. A dirty boy who has been consorting with the professional criminals in camp appears before me and addresses someone above me in the effeminate voice cultivated by many of the homosexuals. "Tell Vulyasha," he says to some unseen person on the upper berth, "that they brought in some performers." After a pause, a hoarse voice responds from above. "Valyusha wants to know who they are. They're performers from the cultural division, a magician and 2 singers. One of the singers is from Harbin." The slipper stirs and disappears. The voice from above says, "Bring them here." From the edge of my bunk, I see 3 men standing under the lamp, 2 in pea jackets and 1 in a fur-lined jacket. The faces of all 3 express reverence. "Which one is from Harbin?" the voice asks. "I am," the man in the fur-lined jacket answers. "Valyusha, says you should sing something. In Russian, French, Italian, English?" the singer asks, stretching his neck. Valyusha says it should be in Russian. What about the guards? Is it all right if I sing quietly? What about the guards? Is it all right if I sing quietly? Don't worry about them. Do it right, just like in Harbin. The singer steps back a few paces and sings the Torreader couplet. Its breath frosts each time he exhales. The singing is followed by a deep growl, and the voice from above commands. Valyusha says to sing a song. The singer grows pale and tries again. Whisper, my golden one, whisper, beloved, whisper, my golden Taiga, twist and turn pathways, one after the other, through our free and handsome Taiga. Valyusha said that was good, the voice utters from above. Singer sighs in relief. Wet from nervousness, his steaming forehead looks as if it were surrounded by a halo. The singer wipes his brow with his palm, and the halo disappears. Now take off your jacket, the voice says, here's a replacement. A padded coat is tossed down from above. The singer silently takes off his jacket and puts on the padded coat. You can go now, the voice says from above. Valyusha wants some sleep. The Harbin singer and his companions disappear in the barracks fog. I move back from the edge of the bunk, curl up, and fall asleep with my hands pushed up in the sleeves of my padded coat. In what seems like no more than a moment, however, I am awakened by a loud, emotional whispering. My friend and I were walking down the street in Ulaanbaatar. It was time to eat. There was a Chinese cafeteria on the corner. We went and saw they had Chinese meat pies on the menu. I'm from Siberia, and I know our Siberian meat pies, the kind they make in the Urals, but these were Chinese. We decided to order 100. The Chinese manager burst out laughing, said that it would the Chinese manager burst out laughing, said that would be a lot, and grinned from ear to ear. Well, how about 10? He kept laughing and said that would be a lot. So we ordered 2. He shrugged his shoulders, went off to the kitchen, and brought them out. Each one was the size of your hand and had hot grease poured all over it. The 2 of us ate half of one and left. Let me tell you what happened to me one time. It takes a considerable effort of the will to stop listening and fall asleep again. The smell of smoke awakens me. Above me, in the criminal kingdom, they are smoking. Someone with homemade cigarette butts. There were with homemade cigar. Someone with a homemade cigar climbs down, and the pungent aroma wakes everyone below. Again I hear whispering. You can't imagine how many cigarette butts there were back at the party regional office in Severnoye. Severnoye? My God, oh my God, Aunt Polly, our cleaning lady, she was constantly complaining that she couldn't get everything swept up, and I didn't even understand what a butt was back then. I fell asleep again. Someone jerks my foot. It is the assignment man. His inflamed eyes are furious. At his command, I come out into the yellow strip of light by the door. All right, he says. So you don't want to go to the mine? I am silent. How about a warm, collective farm? Damn you. I'd go myself. No. How about a road gang? To tie brooms. Think about it. I know your brooms, I say. Today I tie brooms, and tomorrow they bring me a wheelbarrow. Just what do you want? To go to the hospital. I'm sick. The assignment man writes something down in his notebook and goes away. 3 days later, a medic comes to the minor zone and calls for me. He measures my temperature, looks at the ulcers on my back, and rubs in some sort of ointment. Next chapter. Vaska Denisov, Kidnapper of Pigs. He had to borrow a pea-jacket from a friend for this evening's journey. Vaska's own pea-jacket was too dirty and torn for him to take 2 steps through a civilian village. Anyone might stop him. People like Vaska could pass through the village only 2 by 2 with a guard. Neither the local military types nor the civilian non-convicts liked to see this kind walk alone on the village streets. His kind didn't cause suspicion only when carrying firewood. A small log was burned in the snow near the garage, next to the 6th telegraph pole from the corner in the ditch. It had been done yesterday after work. The driver slowed the truck, and leaning over the edge of the bed, Vaska slid to the ground. He had once found the place where he had buried the log. The bluish snow was darker there and slightly packed down. You could see that in the early twilight, Vaska jumped into the ditch and kicked the snow around. The log appeared gray and flat like a large frozen fish. Vaska dragged the log out onto the road, stood it upright, tapped it to knock the snow off, and bent down to put his shoulder under it. As he lifted it with his hands, he strode off to the village, changing shoulders from time to time. He was weak and exhausted, and he warmed up from the exercise right away. But the warmth didn't last long. In spite of the weight of the log, Vaska could not stay warm. Twilight thickened into a white fog, and the village lit all its yellow electric lights. Vaska smiled, pleased with this calculation. The white fog, he would easily reach his goal unnoticed with the white fog. There was the enormous broken larch tree and the stump, silver in the fog. That meant it was the next house. Vaska threw the log down by the porch, brushed the snow from his felt boots with his mittens, and knocked at the door. It opened to admit him. An elderly, bare-headed woman in an unbuttoned sheepskin coat stared at him anxiously as if awaiting an explanation. "I brought you some wood," Vaska said, struggling to spread the frozen skin of his face into the creases of a smile. Could I speak to Ivan Petrovich? But Ivan Petrovich was already on the way out, holding the curtain up with his hand. "Good," he said. "Where is it?" "Outside," Vaska said. "Wait, and we'll saw it up. Let me get dressed." Ivan Petrovich took a long time hunting for his mittens. The 2 men were wearing out on the porch and cut the log in half without any sawhorses, holding it between their legs and raising it with their hands when necessary. The saw was dull and badly set. "You can come by some other time," Ivan Petrovich said, and set the teeth. "Here's a splitting axe. Bring it right into the apartment when you're done. Don't leave it in the corridor." Vaska's head was spinning from hunger, but he split up the log into smaller pieces and carried them all around the house. "Well, that's all," the woman said, coming out from behind the curtain. "That's all." Vaska would not leave, but stood shifting from one foot to the other. Ivan Petrovich appeared again. "Listen," I said, "I don't have any bread just now. We gave all the soup to the pigs, and I don't have anything to give you. You can drop by next week." Vaska remained silent, but would not leave. Ivan Petrovich searched through his wallet. "Here's 3 rubles just for you, for such good wood. As for tobacco, you know it's really expensive nowadays." Vaska stuck the wrinkled 3-ruble note inside his shirt and left. 3 rubles wouldn't buy even a pinch of tobacco. Nauseous from hunger, he remained standing on the porch. The pigs had eaten Vaska's bread and soup. Vaska took out a green 3-ruble note and tore it into tiny shreds. For a long time, shreds of paper, seized by the wind, flew along the shining, polished snow crust, and when the last fragments had disappeared into the white fog, Vaska stepped down from the porch. Swaying slightly from weakness, he walked, not home, but through the village. He kept walking and walking, past 1-storied, 2-storied, and 3-storied places. He walked up to the first porch and jerked the door handle open. Excuse me. The door squeaked and gave way. Vaska walked into a dark corridor, dimly lit by a dull electric bulb. He walked past the apartment doors. At the end of the corridor was a storage room, and Vaska leaned against the door, opened it, and stepped over the threshold. In the storeroom stood some sacks of onion, and perhaps salt. Vaska ripped open one of the sacks. Barley. Angry and excited, he sank his shoulder into the sack and pushed it aside. Under the sack lay frozen hog carcasses. Vaska yelped with joy, but he was too weak to tear even a hunk from one of the carcasses. Further back, under the sack, lay frozen suckling pigs, and Vaska could see nothing else. He ripped free one of the frozen suckling pigs and, holding it in his arms like a baby, moved toward the door. But people already coming out of the room, and white fog was filling the corridor. Someone shouted "Stop!" and dived at his legs. Vaska jumped upward, clutching the piglet in his arms, and ran out into the street. The residents of the house ran after him. Someone shot at him. Someone bellowed like a beast. But Vaska ran on, seeing nothing. In a few minutes he realized that his legs were taking him of their own accord to the only official building that he knew in the village, the headquarters for vitamin expeditions, where Vaska himself had once worked as a gatherer of dwarf cedar. Vaska had himself once worked as a gatherer of dwarf cedar, the needles of which were boiled for vitamin C. The chase was close. Leaping up onto the porch, Vaska pushed the man on duty aside and rushed down the corridor, the crowd hot on his heels. He ran into the office of the recreation officer, and from there fled through a different door to the lounge. There was no place else to run. Only then did Vaska realize he had lost his hat. The frozen piglet was still in his hands. Vaska put the pig down, overturned the massive benches, and propped the door shut with them. Then he dragged the podium up against the doors as well. Someone shook the door handle, and silence ensued. There and then, Vaska sat down on the floor, took the raw piglet in both hands, and started to gnaw. When the guards arrived, the doors were opened and the barricade was removed. Vaska had eaten half of the pig. Chapter: A Day Off. 2 squirrels, the color of the sky but with black faces and tails, were totally absorbed by something going on beyond the silver larch trees. I walked nearly up to their tree before they noticed me. Their claws scratched at the bark, and their blue shadows scampered upward. Somewhere high above, they fell silent. Fragments of bark stopped falling on the snow, and I saw what they had been watching. A man was praying in the forest clearing. His cloth cloth hat lay at his feet, and the frost had already whitened his close-cropped head. There was an extraordinary expression on his face, the kind people have when they recollect something extremely precious, such as childhood. The man crossed himself with quick, broad gestures, as if using his fingers to pull his head down. His expression so altered his features that I did not immediately recognize him. It was the convict Samaritan, a priest who lived in the same barracks as I. He had not yet seen me, and his lips, numb from the cold, were quietly and solemnly pronouncing the words that I had learned as a child. Samaritan was saying Mass in the silver forest. Slowly he crossed himself, straightened up, and saw me. Solemnity and tranquillity disappeared from his face, and the accustomed wrinkles, returning to his forehead, drew his eyebrows together. The Samaritan did not like mockery. He picked up his hat, shook it, and put it on. "You were saying the liturgy?" I said. No, the Samaritan said, smiling at my ignorance. "How could I say Mass? I don't have bread or wine or my stole. This is just a regulation issued towel." He shifted the dirty, waffled rag that hung round his neck, and really did create the impression of a priest's stole. The cold had covered the towel with snowy crystals, which glimmered joyously in the sun like the embroidery of a church vestment. Besides, I am ashamed. I don't know which way it's east. The sun rises for 2 hours and sets behind the same mountains where it rose in the morning. Where is the east? Is it all that important to know where the east is? No, of course not. Don't leave, I'll tell you. I'm not saying Mass. I can't say one. I'm simply remembering the Sunday service. I don't even know if today is Sunday. It's Thursday, I said. The overseer said so this morning. The overseer said so this morning. There, you see? No, there is no way I can say Mass. It's just that it's easier for me this way. And I forget I'm hungry, Samaritan said. I know that everyone has something that is most precious to them. To him, the last thing that he has left, and it is that something which helps him to live, to hang on to the life of which we were being so insistently and stubbornly deprived. If for Samaritan this was the liturgy of John the Baptist, then my last thing was verse. Everything else had long since been forgotten, cast aside, driven from memory. Only poetry had not been crushed by exhaustion, frost, hunger, and endless humiliation. The sun set on the sudden darkness of an early winter evening. The sunset and the sudden darkness of an early winter evening had already filled the space between the trees, wandered off to our barrack, and a low hut with small window. It looked something like a miniature stable. I had already seized the heavy, icy door with both hands when I heard a rustle in the neighboring hut, which served as a tool shed with saws, shovels, axes, crowbars, and picks. It was supposed to be locked on days off, but on that day the lock was missing. I stepped over the threshold of the tool shed, and the heavy door almost crushed me. There were so many cracks in the walls that my eyes quickly became accustomed to this semi-darkness. 2 professional criminals were scratching a 4-month-old German Shepherd puppy. The puppy lay on its back, squealing and waving its 4 paws in the air. The older man was holding it by the collar. Since we were from the same work gang, my arrival caused no consternation. "It's you. Is there anyone else out there?" No one, I answered. "All right, let's get on with it," said the older man. "Oh, God." I can eat them. Let me warm up a little first, the younger man answered. Look at him struggle. He felt the puppy's warm side near the heart and tickled him. The puppy squealed confidently and licked his hand. So you like to lick? So you like to lick? Well, you won't be doing much of that anymore, Semyon. Holding the pup by the collar in his left hand, Semyon pulled a hatchet from behind his back and struck the puppy on the head with a short, quick swing. The puppy jerked, and blood spilled out onto the icy floor of the shed. Well, if it was quick. Hold him tight, Semyon shouted, raising the hatchet again. What for? He's not a rooster, the young man said. Skin him while he's still warm. Semyon said in a tone of a mentor, and buried the hide in the snow. That evening, no one in the barracks could sleep because of the smell of meat soup. The criminals would have eaten it all. But there wasn't enough of them in our barracks to eat an entire pup. There was still meat left in a pot. Semyon crooked his finger in my direction. Take it. I don't want to, I said. All right, Semyon said. His eyes ran quickly over the rows of bunks. In that case, we'll give it to the preacher. Hey, Father, have some mutton. Just wash out the pot when you're done. The Mighton came out of the darkness into the yellow light of the smoking kerosene lantern, took out the pot, and disappeared. 5 minutes later, he returned with a washed pot. So quick, Semyon asked with interest. You gobbled things down as quick as a seagull. That wasn't mutton, preacher, but dog meat. Remember the dog, North? They used to visit you all the time? Semiton stared wordlessly at Semyon, turned around and walked out. I followed him. Semiton was standing in the moon. His face seemed leaden. Sticky spittle was hanging from his blue lips. Semiton wiped his mouth with his sleeve and glared at me angrily. They're rotten, I said. Of course, Semiton replied, but the meat was delicious, no worse than mutton. Sorry for my struggle to read today. Thank you for listening. Have a good afternoon.